Today's guest and my very first guest happens to be my father, Harold Rueff. Throughout my life, I've been fortunate to know many great men, and I consider my father to be the greatest. I'm going to have him on several more times to talk about a number of things, but today he is here to talk specifically about some of his time in Vietnam. He was an infantryman with the 2nd Battalion, 14th Infantry in the 25th Infantry Division of the United States Army. He was awarded the Bronze Star, the Air Medal, the Vietnam Cross of Gallantry, the Combat Infantry Badge, to name just a few of his awards. He was also a tunnel rat and served time in a recon unit that was known as C.R.I.P, which was the Combined Reconnaissance Intelligence Platoon. He just turned 75 2 days ago. It has a lot of interesting stories from Vietnam. These are just a few of those. So here is episode number 1 with my father, Harold Rueff. Please enjoy. You're the first guest that I've ever had on here. Oh. So this is my first guest, Harold Rueff, who is my father. And today we're just going to talk about a lot of different things. Primarily, we're going to get into your Vietnam service. Okay. Which that's how this whole thing got going anyway. Is several years ago, I wanted to get your Vietnam service. I wanted to have a family record of it because you and I had kind of discussed in the past how we come from a military family that goes all the way back in this country, at least to Zacharias Wade, who fought in the Revolutionary War. Right. We hit the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, World War II.
I think we might have missed the War of 1912, but we don't know for sure.
Yeah.
1812, yeah.
Well, every once in a while you got to sit one out, I guess. Yeah. But anyway, based off of us sitting down and doing that, which that was a visual recording that we did. It was not just audio. And got a lot of positive feedback on that. And a lot of, friends and family had heard it. And then, other people from that had kind of said, you ought to start a podcast. And so really you're the main reason that this whole thing is going. So, and if I do 5, 10, 15, 20 episodes and that's it, then that's all we do. But I want to record some interesting stories from interesting people. And you certainly fit that bill. So,
well, I hardly think so, but thank you for the opportunity to be in the first one anyway.
Well, yeah,
appreciate it.
Yeah, and it really does, Dad. It means a lot to me. So, let's just get in early life. You grew up small farm south of Tower Hill. Mm-hmm. You were born in 1948. Right. So primarily your growing up was in the 50s and 60s. Right. What was that like? As far as like the time frame, what would you say the general life was like for people at that time in this area? Well,
a lot of people pretty much lived off the places they were at. I mean, big gardens, canning, homemade bread, stuff like that, Our grandfather, he had cows, but I think he always had to sell them because he couldn't afford to eat them,
Right. You needed the money.
Yeah. So, but no, cars and, old roads, out in front of the old home place there where the garden used to be. If you turn on west, mm-hmm. There used to be a big mud mire there.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And how far west past the old place?
Oh, as you turn into the lane, probably 20, 30, 40 feet.
No kidding.
Yeah. Yeah. People get stuck in it, and people put boards, and, they'd dump gravel, and then they started doing oil roads, and that was kind of interesting because they'd grade them up one day, and they'd never let you know. They'd grade them up, and then it was like a rocky road, and then they'd come and oil it. Well, in those days, too, they'd let that oil sink in for several days, so you had to walk in and walk out. So Dad every morning before he even got to work, I had to walk 3/4 of a mile to get to his vehicle. And if I look back at it, I think it's interesting because none of them vehicles were ever broken into, you know.
Just a different time, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
I remember talking to you one time, and I don't remember what we were discussing, and something about money came up, and you laughed. You're like, well, nobody had money.
No. Yeah, rarely did people even lock their doors because, you know, the only thing to steal would be some food and probably Dad's shotguns, you know.
Yeah, they're just...
There was no money in the house.
And you knew everybody because there wasn't as many people.
Right. And, you know, but, of course, we lived, had a grandma and grandpa early years, and then later on an aunt and uncle and the grandma and grandpa down the road. And then, of course, you knew everybody. So if a stranger would happen to be there, you know. But I remember a lot of salesmen, too, would come by. The Fuller Brush man, I think there was a Raleigh guy, you know.
Now, Raleigh, was that the salve?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they had other things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But the Fuller Brush salesman, and that's about all I, you know, can remember at the time. But it was an interesting time. I mean, it was something to get your first bicycle.
Sure.
You know.
I remember Mom talking about, you know, of course, she grew up poor as well. And for Christmas, she would get shoes.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, you know, I look at like my children, well, how I grew up was different.
Sure.
How they grew up was different. And then how my grandkids are, I mean, just as far as the amount of toys and, you know, the amount of available, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because in the summertime, I had an older brother, Larry, and sometimes I could get into his shoes, but we didn't get shoes in the summer for the most part, especially if he was growing, you know, because school's starting.
So they saved up and
saved up to get it, yeah.
Right.
And back then, when we used to go over to Pana to get stuff, it wasn't Saks then. It was, they would pile all like blue jeans and the shirts and everything, and they'd tear off big brown pieces of paper and had twine, and that's how they'd wrap it up, and you'd carry it down the road like that.
I'll be darned.
Or down the street. Yeah, there wasn't no sacks hardly.
I never even thought about that.
Yeah, and brown sacks come in. Oh, I'm sure they had them earlier, but Pana didn't, you know.
Right. I'll be darned. A lot of wild game.
Oh, yeah. Well, as far as wild game, it's not like it is today. There were no turkeys.
Right.
There never no deer. But there was lots of rabbits, squirrels, quail, and occasional pheasant where we lived.
And then you ate a lot of fish, too.
Yeah. And that's a funny thing, too, because back then, a 2 or 3 inch bluegill or sun perch, it went in but Dad, he'd spend hours doing that, and would eat them little sun perch, tail and body and all, because it ended up, the way Mom would fry it, would taste like French fries almost.
Yeah, I remember.
But only the fish flavor.
Sure.
You know? So it was different.
Yeah.
And bullfrogs would gig them when the season was right.
Yeah. Which frog legs, for people who haven't eaten them, they're pretty darn good.
Well, that and the wild ones are better.
Right.
Well, if you had wild ones and then you go to the tame, it's just not the same. But you know, that is what it is.
So, pretty rural, poor rural upbringing.
Yeah, we weren't as poor as some people, but you know, there wasn't a whole lot of money to go around. You know, it was right after World War II.
You were never hungry.
Never remember it, no.
Yeah, I was thinking, well, you and I don't know, it's been a while back, but we were discussing that. I don't know what it's like to be hungry, or you know, true hunger.
Right.
Yeah, I've never in my entire life not known where I always knew where my next meal was coming from.
Right.
And I can't identify with the fear, the anxiety that would bring. So so you were poor, but you guys always had food.
Right. But, you know, poor people did. Like I say, they canned a lot, you know. Grapes, well, you make grape jam or jelly, you know.
Well, of course, your parents grew up during the Depression.
Oh, yeah.
And Grandma had grown up in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
You know, the Dust Bowl and
Yeah. So, you know,
I think they knew what
they knew hunger. I remember my Aunt Helen, which later on became a doctor in nutrition, and she said that when she would go to school, her and her brothers and sisters, that they would have homemade bread and lard that had sugar on it. That's all they had to eat. And she says sometime that lard was a little bit rancid. But, there's proteins and carbs and,
and
everything, and fat and everything there. But she says, so that's why she got into nutrition.
Right.
So, yeah, it kind of gives you a, guideline of how things could have been, but for us, no, we never was hungry. Of course, as a young kid, you're always hungry.
Well, sure. Right. Yeah. You just go till you can't go, and then you're so hungry or thirsty, you come in and you're,
right.
You needed a drink 2 hours ago, but it didn't dawn on you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody carried a water bottle. Heck, when we was kids, we'd even drink out of the creek. That's where they had fertilizers. Mm-hmm. The only thing you had to worry about was a dead cow laying in the stream or something.
Sure. Probably wasn't the healthiest, but if you're used to it, your biome was probably, and you probably got a little water-borne illness from time to time, I'm sure.
Oh, well, back then, too, we had an outside privy or an outhouse.
Yeah, you grew up, there was, now, did you have electricity?
Yeah, I had electricity.
You always had electricity,
right.
But you did not have running water in the house.
No.
You had a hand pump.
Right.
And you had no indoor plumbing, so when
right. Just the kitchen sink.
Right, but when you had to use the bathroom, you had to go to an outhouse.
Right.
And I remember you talking about when you're young and it's the middle of winter and you got the flu, how horrible that is.
Or even if you ain't sick, as you got to go out. And there's one flashlight in the house, and Dad wouldn't let anybody else use it but him.
Right.
Of course. So you'd have to go out the back door and walk about 25 yards to get to the privy, and some nights it's totally dark, and boy, you sit down on a cold seat and scared to death. Sometimes it's hard to get your business done.
Oh, I can only imagine.
But yet not really.
Yeah, well, sure.
Because you want to get back in. But,
yeah. Now, I think the answer is probably fairly obvious, but do you think that's? I mean, it has to be a huge part of why the generations have gotten, now, I don't want to just say weaker, but I think weaker is probably the best term as far as dealing with adversity. Because you guys from your whole generation of, I'll say, people that grew up in the rural areas of the country in the 1940s and 50s, and
mm-hmm.
and there wasn't money, and I mean, little things like that you don't think of. From the time you're a young kid, you got to go out in the dark to go to the bathroom.
Right.
So you're battling monsters the whole way there and the whole way back.
Well, I suppose so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in your mind.
There's a fear,
Sure, and but you got to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
And only entertainment in the earlier years was just the radio.
Uh-huh.
And then, you listen to the Lone Ranger and the Green Hornet, or it might have been Dick Tracy or something like that. I forget all of them.
I remember you said when you got your first set, the very first show, you guys would race home.
Yeah, and it was only 3 channels, but only we could about get 2 of them,
mm-hmm.
and watch a lady cooking.
Yeah, and just enthralled with it.
Yeah. And TV shut off at 12 o'clock at night.
Yeah,
because everybody's got to get a good night's sleep.
Sure.
They never thought anybody stayed up after midnight. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or they couldn't hire the help. I don't know.
Well, I can remember even in my day that it was they'd sign off with the national anthem every night.
Yeah.
They'd sign off with the national anthem, and then it'd.
Oh yeah, you'd have that screen with the
Yeah. Okay, so you're growing up in that environment. Vietnam is a thing. You're watching it on the news. You're hearing about it. Was there a point when, through high school, it's building up? By the time you graduated, I think you pretty much knew that you were going to go. Is that safe to say?
Yeah.
You were the youngest male child
mm-hmm.
in the family, and you knew it was just a matter of time before you get the letter from Uncle Sam that says, I think you told me it said congratulations.
Oh, it does. Yeah. I wish I'd have kept that.
Yeah.
I thought, when the folks passed, maybe they had it, but think I just might have thrown it away.
Yeah. Well, that's
because I had it made at the time. I had a car, a motorcycle. I had a job at Caterpillar. My future was bright.
Sure.
So
Uncle Sam calls you up.
Yeah.
You go. You're 19.
18, I think.
18. Okay.
I forget.
18 or 19.
I think, yeah.
And you go to your basic is in Fort Leonard Wood.
Mm-hmm.
What were your memories of getting to basic training and
well, it's interesting. We met over at Shelbyville, Illinois.
Okay.
And all the kids my age. In fact, there's one guy I worked with Keith Barnes, and I worked with him at Caterpillar, and I might occasionally known a few other people, but not to any degree.
He was the only person that you knew.
Yeah, and even though it was out of Shelby County, you thought you'd know more, but didn't. But anyway, took a bus down to St. Louis and did our physical, and off we went. So I remember going out of that reception center, they call it. That's a heck of a place because you run around in your underwear half the time.
Oh yeah,
getting probed in places that you're really not accustomed to.
Yeah, right.
And so it was funny, but we got on the bus to go to Fort Leonard Wood for training, and there was a bunch of hippie-looking guys, and there's one guy looked like a college professor, but a young one, had on the old round spectacles and a suit and a tie, and he's looking like Dapper Dan, and they're saying, "Hey, you don't have to go. We can send you to Canada." And of course, we're getting on the bus, and this guy, they're handing out literature, and I says, "I don't need that. I can't read." And then he just stopped, like hey man, they're drafting guys that don't even know how to read.
They can't even read, man. Yeah.
Which of course, obviously I did, but
Sure.
That's just how the leftist policy, their mindset was.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
They're
only the dumb kids go.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it might be some truth to that.
I don't know about dumb, but certainly unconnected.
Right.
If you got the right last name and your daddy's in the right occupation, you're not going to go become an infantryman in Vietnam.
Yeah.
You get to basic.
Yeah. Well, Fort Leonard, they call it Fort Lost in the Woods, and of course it's a mindset that I wasn't really prepared for, even though my father had been in and a lot of uncles, But of course, they're wear you down. And I screwed up right off the first day, going getting my bedding and the sheets, and you got more stuff really than you can carry. And so we stood in formation and said, "Okay, I want to see one pillowcase, I want to see one blanket or two blankets and two sheets." And all of a sudden, boy, I got this made. And I got to it, and all of a sudden I didn't have two sheets. Well, there's a drill instructor. He was walking by and behind us as we're doing our halfway march to, our barracks.
Sure.
And so that first night I got put up for, then later on he said, "Well, go up and you tie a white towel around the edge of your bed." And then somebody had to go get toilet paper. So screw-ups, we had to go get the toilet paper, and then we come back. Well, I have my hands full of toilet paper, and here's a officer, and they says, "If you see an officer, you be sure and salute." And I said, "All right." All of us, you don't say "all right."
Right, yeah.
But anyway, and so I see him, and so I shift all the toilet paper to my right hand, and then I salute him with my left.
Oh, boy.
And, boy, that's about the biggest military no you can do.
Oh, yeah.
And it ended up, he was from West Point, and I'm sure just got there, and, boy, I got a good reaming in. But then he showed me the proper military protocol to how to do it. But, I thought, boy, right off the bat, we ain't getting along with these people very well.
And you don't want them to know your name. They always, the advice I had from you, and like you said, Grandpa, and when I was growing up, all the older men, whether it was my uncles, grandparents, or just older men in the community, everybody, it seems like, not everybody, but a vast majority had been in, and everybody's got advice. And it was always, when you graduate basic training, you don't want them to know who you are. If you can just kind of, and so day one, they know who you are.
Right.
Yeah, so you're kind of caught behind the 8 ball. Right.
Right.
But you complete your training. You're trained on the M14 rifle.
Well, through basic, yeah.
Through basic training. Then so your AIT was in Fort Ord, California.
That's correct, yeah.
And to be an infantryman.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get to AIT, you're trained on the new weapon, the Eugene Stoner weapon, the M16A1.
Right.
So you had to switch weapon platform, which you've always been a good shot. You shot expert. And so now you've got to switch to a different weapons platform.
Right.
And when you first got your M16, what was your first thought of it?
I couldn't believe how light it was and the small bullets. And I thought, yeah, well,
plastic and
it just didn't feel like a rifle.
Right.
But I sure enjoy carrying it because it was so light.
Sure.
But then we got to the range, and you got to shoot it, and I placed expert.
Yeah.
And I was then all of a sudden, and then to fire at full auto. Of course, as old country boy, you don't, none of that stuff's around, and that was kind of neat,
Sure.
And that's back in the days, you could burn a clip and real quick. Of course, we only had 20-round clips starting out. Now everything's 30, but
right.
Back then it was.
And I find it interesting you refer to them as clips. Mm-hmm. When I was in, it was magazines. Mm-hmm. You would never refer to it as a clip, Mm-hmm. So you wrap up, and I remember you telling me one time AITs when everything kind of started to click for you.
Yeah.
The whole soldiering, the whole,
mm-hmm.
It was, everything was kind of falling in line. You got it figured out by then.
Mm-hmm.
So now do you come home for?
As I recall, I came home for 18 days.
Okay. So you come home, but next stop's Vietnam.
All right.
So I imagine it was good to be home, but in the back of your mind, man, I can't imagine what that's like, knowing where you're getting ready to get. And you were in Vietnam from 1968 to 1969.
Right.
It was rocking then. It wasn't. I mean, the war had built up. It was going strong.
I've heard that before.
Yeah. So you knew when you land in Vietnam, and you walk off the plane.
Right.
What can you remember? What your sense? What?
Oh yeah. It felt like 100% humidity and a fishy, moldy smell. And of course, you're getting off the tarmac, and then way in the distance, after we got off the plane, and they haven't really fed us much. Had snacks on the plane and maybe one meal.
Uh-huh.
But that's a long flight,
Sure.
And so we went to an Air Force mess, and as we're getting ready to get out, I don't really remember what happened that first night, but anyway, where we went. I think we got on trucks, because that was in Ton Son Nhut, I think, where we flew into. And it could have
Ton Son Nhut Air Base.
You're right.
Okay.
And then I heard some booms in the background, and there's this one, you could tell an old-timer, and I said, what's that? Because I don't want to believe it,
Right.
It was booms, artillery going off. And he goes, you know what it is.
Right.
And I said, well, damn it. Yeah, I guess I do.
And this is supposed to be a relatively safer area.
Yeah. But, yeah, so it was something else.
So now you're in processing then for, I don't know, several days, I would guess.
We went to the 25th Division, and then there was 5-day orientation.
Okay.
I guess, first of all, to get you used to the climate.
Right.
And then, the do's and don'ts and, all this and that.
Sure.
And wasn't even, those 5 days, we never had a weapon, which because then when you're at division headquarters, there's fire going out on occasion, and of course we didn't have to pull no guard duty or anything like that because we're new guys.
And you were assigned to the 2nd Battalion, 14th Infantry,
Yeah.
and that was part of the 25th Infantry Division, which
Right.
is, of course, the movie they did. They did the movie Platoon on that division, which we don't even have to get into all the inaccuracies. That movie, I know
well,
you hate.
Thank you.
You hate
'cause
that movie,
bunch of BS there.
Yeah. But so, okay, now you're going out to get with your unit, your platoon, your company,
Mm-hmm.
and everything. So that's an interesting story. Your first day of going out.
Boy, yeah, that day, by memory really sucks. First it started out like I thought I was pretty pampered. They got me in the gun jeep. I was the only guy that day. And they took me out on the, we call it a tarmac, but it's like a bunch of folded stamped sheet metal.
Okay.
And it was there as an airfield. And I thought, boy, and he said, wait here, there'll be a helicopter coming in to pick you up. And I said, okay, Sergeant. As our supply sergeant took me out. So I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, I'm interested in the whole thing because I'd really never seen a helicopter fly, even though we'd practiced getting on and off of them. But they were just wooden platforms.
Just like mock-ups.
Yeah, but it wasn't even, there's no front, no tail, no nothing on it. So, you really don't know what you're dealing with.
Right.
So anyway, we got on. I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, here's this Chinook coming in. And boy, it turns around, and it lands, and the prop blast of them things is just absolutely incredible. So I'm all hunkered down and turned most of my other gear in, so all I got's a backpack. And I finally got issued a weapon, which I was really pleased to have. Still didn't have any ammo. Right. But, that ramp comes down on that Chinook, and the guy goes, hey, come on, get on. So I get on, and they lamp raises, and up we go. Off we go flying. And I thought, man, it's just me and the crew chief that I can see. I thought, boy, I must be a special person here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then we probably flew for 5-10 minutes. It's hard to say. And all of a sudden they start getting lower and lower, and I'm fascinated by being in a helicopter for the first time.
Sure.
Kind of spooky too in a way.
Oh, I bet.
The vibration of them things and the noise, but
right.
And anyway, we land, and the ramp goes down, and the guy don't say anything, he just points. So I get off, the ramp goes up, and that prop blast, and they'd cut the rice fields, and that chaff and everything's blowing around, and off it goes. And all of a sudden I look to the front, of course, after everything's settled down, and I don't see nothing. I look to my right, and I look to my left, and I thought, man, they dropped me off in the middle of nowhere, and I don't even see anybody. So I got up, and I grabbed my rucksack and my rifle, and then I heard somebody hollering behind me, And so I went over, and they told me they'd introduced me it was a sergeant, he'd introduced me to the old man, which I didn't even know what an old man was.
Right. What amazes me is that story. When that bird takes off, you're looking around and you see no signs of
Right.
life.
Right. It was frightening.
It'd have to be.
Right.
And then you finally saw the little built-up area, and you thought, well, that's got to be it. So you walk there, and then they bring you in, and
I meet the old man, which is the captain.
right, which was a company commander.
Right.
When I was in, we referred to it as a battalion commander was the old man.
Okay.
But when you were in,
Well, I don't know.
it was
They said the old man, and but he was standing there in a t-shirt and underwear on, so I don't know what I'm dealing with.
right.
You know
Well,
what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's got a hooch, and
Right.
then a sergeant comes in and said, "Well, you'll be, I think, second squad or whatever it was." And guys, it was funny because all of a sudden they started going through my backpack. well, you don't need this because they issued white underwear at the time. He says, use that to clean your weapon, and there's always somebody to take care of you, but you're a FNG.
Right.
And I'll let everybody out there
Yeah.
surmise
freaking new guy.
Right.
Yeah.
And because, there's no emotional bond. You're new. They don't know how you're going to act, or you're going to shoot one of them accidentally. There's a lot of things going in their head, too.
Sure.
So you got to prove yourself. But and then that first night, after all that, then they said, well, we're going out on an ambush patrol. And so there I am. I got to have, I think I had 15 to 20 clips or magazines. I think around 15 or 12 to 15 probably. And like they're 20 rounders, so I had to put ammo in each one of them, which don't take long. But still don't know, and their guys are telling me what to do and what not to do, and fill your canteen up. And then we had supper, and I said, well, hell, I can't eat.
Yeah.
The guy said, well, you better eat something, And
so you knew before you were supposed to eat, you knew that you were going out that night.
Well,
on patrol.
It was getting around supper time, or when
right.
they said, well, we got ambush patrol tonight, and then so it got dark, and we started outside the wire, because you start out in daylight, and then you go to your secondary, and then from secondary you go to your primary, if I remember all that correctly.
Right.
And they said, well, Rueff, you're going to be walking point.
First night.
First
time ever going out on a real live mission.
Right.
And you're point man.
Right.
Tell the people why that is. Why do you put the new guy on point?
Well, because they don't care about you. If you trip a mine or something.
Or you walk into the ambush.
Right. Then they ain't out nothing other than they got to pick you up.
Right. But then there was also, I remember you said there was kind of a second point to that too, because they kind of wanted to watch the new guy. It's like, number one, they don't care about you. So,
right.
You walk into something, all right, they don't even know your name.
Right.
But it's also to kind of see if this...
Yeah, how you're going to react.
How did you react?
Well, I was so slow that to go into our primary that finally the next morning a guy... our sergeant, our squad sergeant, and he goes, well, why was you moving your arms up and down like that? And I said, and he says, you starting low and going up. I said, well, I was trying to feel for trip wires. And he goes, hey, you might have it together.
Yeah.
So, of course, I was so slow that, soon they got me away from all that.
But, yeah, but that was good, I would think. You'd rather be the guy that's coming in. You don't want to be the idiot that's just tromping through like, no care in the world.
Right.
Now, you were operating, the area that you operated in was around Cu Chi. You were south and west of Saigon, is that correct?
A little bit south, or could have been a little bit north and straight west of Saigon,
okay.
Cu Chi. And then Cu Chi was a little bit northwest of Saigon, and where was that? Was between Cu Chi and Tay Net.
Okay. So you're with the line unit for, I want to get into C.R.I.P when you first saw C.R.I.P, but before that, how long were you in country before you went down a tunnel, would you say? How long?
Oh, probably 3 weeks when I decided it's something I'd want to do.
Okay.
I met one guy who stayed back one day, and he was a little short guy. Smitty was his name. Can't remember it. First name, didn't know him that well. But he seemed to really have it together, and he was short, and he was going to go home, and he was a tunnel rat, and I thought, that's cool. And he just kind of told me what to look out for, and, this and that. And then he went back to the rear, and I just took over. I think there was another guy or two that might do it, but they was mostly, we just run into, around that area, just run into a lot of spider holes. And then you might have, be 10 yards apart, and there'd be a spider hole, but yet there'd be a tunnel connecting them so that they could shoot from one location, crawl down, shoot from the other, and then make it where they thought you were two guys shooting instead of one, you know.
How long were you actually in the field doing tunnel rat work before they sent you to go to tunnel rat school?
Oh, probably a month and a half, 2.
Okay. So you're already doing it, and then they decide to send you to have the training on it.
Right.
And you now, was it the 25th Infantry Division tunnel rat school, or was it like a U.S. Army tunnel rat?
It was 25th Division School.
Okay. Which was set up
at Cu
Chi, which is the largest tunnel complex, I think, in South Vietnam. I mean, there's books called The Tunnels of Cu Chi.
Right.
And you trained in some of those. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're trained, and they trained you to go in feet first. I remember you.
Well, I had one sergeant said, well, if it's me, he said, I'd go in feet first, because if you're going to find a bomb, he's at least to just blow your legs off, and you still live. And I thought, well, I'm 19 years old, and I thought, without any legs, I don't want to live.
Right, yeah.
I just couldn't imagine that concept.
Sure.
So I decided, to me, and that's what I'd always done anyway, to me, logically, if you got your face down there and you see something, then you ain't going to blow it up.
Yeah.
You throw a grenade in or something, and just bypass that.
I think of all the footage that I've seen of the Vietnam War, almost all of them have went in head first.
Yeah.
I have seen some that did go in feet first, and I'm guessing maybe they had shined their light and seen there's like a bigger room, so they kind of hopped in that way. Yeah.
Well, it could be a ladder too. Some of them would just, depending on where you're at, but sometimes it'd be like as flat as a yard, a normal yard, and it'd just be a spider hole. Some of them were hidden, with trap doors and all that.
And I know it's amazing how complex some of these they were complete networks. They had factories, movie theaters, hospitals, underground.
Right. Now, I never, in my area operation, I never got into any of that enormity, although I have been in some big ones,
Right.
That would, I've been in with ceilings 8 to 9 feet tall, I'm certain of.
That's crazy.
But then all of a sudden you'd think, well, these tunnels are really going to go off, and be in an expanse.
Sure.
And then it just end in a blank wall. So you never knew.
Right. I remember you telling me that you were in one, and you were too big really to be a tunnel rat.
I was a little big, my shoulders.
Yeah, you were, of course, back then, you're a skinny 19-year-old kid, but you were a little bit too tall, and you had a little bit too big of shoulders to be doing it. And because I think I read the average Vietnamese man's 5'2".
Right.
And you were considerably bigger than that. So you're going down. I remember you telling me one of the tunnels that you had went down, you're going down, and it's tight any dadgum way. And you work your way however far down you go, and then it just stops.
Right.
It doesn't go left. It doesn't go right. There's no room. The tunnel just quits.
Right.
And then you got to back all the way out.
Right.
Hey, the thought of that, as I get older, I don't know. I think I'm getting a little claustrophobic in my old age here. I can't imagine that.
Yeah. Well, today I can't stand the tight enclosures.
I guess it's better than having somebody shoot at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I was lucky. I never run into anybody in all of them that I went in. But the day I took off, there was another guy that wanted to do it, and he went in. I had a little Beretta 22 that I'd smuggled over. Well, but anyway.
Yeah, well,
and I think it was called the Minx or something like that. And so.
Well, as a sidebar, I don't want to interrupt you, Pop. We'll come back to that. But do you remember I was in the Army when the Rodney King riots were going on? I had flown home.
Right.
And I was going to fly back to the SeaTac airport. And I remember you were like, hey, I want you to take a pistol because you might run into some trouble getting back to the base. And I'm like, Dad, I can't take a pistol on an airline. And you're like, well, sure you can. I've done it. Of course, this is all pre 9/11, and it's all But
right.
you had taken that little pistol. We won't get into how. But you had I guess it's not that important now. I mean, it was a false bottom on a shaving kit.
And I'll just say I was lying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
we might be making this whole thing up.
Exactly.
As a matter of fact, we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
it was the bottom of my first shaving kit, and the box. If you turn the box over, it was black, and so I just put that in the bottom. And I think I had a shaving brush or something, which we never used, but except to clean our rifles, and some other stuff to wedge in and other stuff on top. And back then there was no X-rays or none of that. They didn't search us. Now they searched us when we came back.
Right.
But
Which,
not a physical search, but
right. Went through your gear.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, you started off carrying a 22 caliber
right
when you would go in, but then you ended up switching.
No, I carried it all 22 the whole time. Because see, in training, they had a Mark I Ruger 22, and but I think they screwed up there because they had the long barrel, like 7-8 inch barrel, 7-inch probably, 6, 3/4, whatever. And they had a holster that would go on your belly. Well, I guess that's as good as anything, I think, to me. And I don't know really where I think a smaller pistol was better for it. Silence would have been, the cat's meow. But
most guys carried a 40. Most guys, they carried a 40.
45.
But you carried, I thought you also carried that Chi-Com. That's that.
Oh, yeah.
That 7.6.
That's correct. I forgot about that.
Yeah. And you traded a black and white TV in Vietnam to get that pistol.
Right.
It's a little Tokarov.
Right.
It's a Chinese knockoff.
Right.
And
which is a knockoff from I think the 1903 Browning patent.
The genius of John Moses Browning.
Yes.
Who sits at the right hand of the Father. Yeah.
Right.
He's the prophet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think it's a design off of his, which the Russians, they added a hammer to the back.
Mm-hmm.
And Moses or Browning had it to where it was just an internal hammer.
Right. So you're tunnel ratting and you're with the regular line unit at this time, which just means that's just a standard infantry unit.
Right.
Okay. When did you first see C.I.P in action? Which C.I.P is, I'm going to describe that. That is a reconnaissance unit. It's one of the kind of special op units that was made just for Vietnam. There were never really before or after. And C.I.P stands for Combined Reconnaissance Intelligence Platoon. And it was a platoon, and I think there was only 2 of them. I think there was the 2nd Battalion of the 14th, which was you guys were the Golden Dragons, and then I think there was the Wolfhounds. There was because the book Everything We Had that they did that talks, which is the only thing I've ever seen that's even discussed a C.I.P platoon. I mean, that's like, it's almost lost to history. I'm sure the Department of Defense, has records on it, but to my knowledge, and I could be way off, I think there was only 2 C.I.P platoons.
Really? I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if the Manchus or the Wolfhounds or...
And maybe there were other...
I don't know.
Maybe there were other battalions.
I know when we left Lucroix, there was another C.I.P unit to come in, took our place there, and then we moved to Ganoy. And which from there we could see the Black Virgin Mountain.
Muy Bao Din.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was your first contact? Do you remember the first time you saw?
Yeah, it was getting towards, we'd already had evening meal, and we're sitting around and, getting ready to, line up who's going to be doing, your rotation on your guard duty and all that. And, you clean yourself up and your weapons, everything, make sure everything's right, in case you get hit.
Sure.
That night. And so all of a sudden it's getting pretty dark, and all of a sudden this 2 choppers come rolling in. And all of a sudden there's some guys got off, and they're wearing black berets and all that, and off the chopper goes, and I thought, boy, I wonder who them guys are. Well, I found out the next day they went out and they pulled a raid to get this whoever or whatever, and but they hit the wrong house. And I guess they had bad intel on that or whatever. But,
right.
But anyway, I thought, well, that's something I want to do. And then I had a sergeant that was really good with mortars, and he could do anything. He's just one of them really military-minded guy and sharp as heck. And I said, boy, I'd like to join them. And he said, well, he says, they're going to send me. He says, I volunteered for it. He says, I'll make sure you come. He said, I like what you do, Ruff. I said, good. So that's kind of how I got in. And then later on, they just started taking guys, from in country,
right,
with no combat experience. But
when you were in, it was basically you want to make sure we're getting guys that are a little bit, they've proven themselves. They're a higher echelon here.
Well, yeah, I guess you could say that.
Well,
there are guys that want to do it. If you want to do it, you're better at somebody that don't.
Sure. Right. Which, and as another side note, it wasn't until years later, the VA, you found out that your MOS, instead of just being 11 Bravo, which is basic infantryman, which you still 11 Bravo, but you have an identifier that you were a senior recon scout.
Yeah. Or is it, I think they said observer?
I don't know.
I
thought it was senior
like
recon
that.
scout.
Well,
or
might have
recon
been.
observer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, we weren't Rangers or LRPs or nothing like that.
Right.
But, but that wasn't our mission. LRPs are long-range patrol.
Right.
They just played hide and seek.
Right.
And only shot if they had to.
Right. They're there to get intel. And grab, reconnaissance.
And we operated, we'd gather intel, and we'd react on it too, pull raids, do
sure.
body snatches, the whole bit.
Well, okay, since you're talking about raids, let's talk about the raid on the tax collector. That was whenever you were awarded your Bronze Star, was for that raid. You guys went after.
Well, I don't know that. I don't know when what reason I was awarded it.
Oh, I thought that was. I thought it was. Okay.
I don't know. They said on actions of such and such a day, but our lieutenant got killed, so it put me in for it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, let's talk about that raid though. So this guy was a tax collector.
Mm-hmm.
Take it from there.
Well, it's kind of foggy anymore, but we got to go up against this one tax collector, and it was weird because all of a sudden, usually we did our own radio communication and this and that, and did our own fire support, to call people in, and would bring our choppers in or whatever, but that day we even had extra personnel. It was a lieutenant, and he had his own RTO, and he was just
which is a radio operator,
right? And he was just there to call in air and everything. And so we went in, we flew low, and there's the Air Forces, I guess it's Air Force or Navy One, you never knew,
right?
But they were attacking a position in front of us, and we're flying underneath an airstrike, basically.
So you guys are lower to the ground.
Right.
The fast movers are above you.
Right.
And they're hammering the area that you're going into.
Right.
Because this guy had his own army, basically, correct? He had his own, private security detail. And he was a bad guy.
Right. Yeah. I guess he was the one that pretty much controlled about all the area tax money and everything you'd see from the poor people around the Saigon area up to Duquois. I don't know if he went to Tainan. I don't know. Who knows what their mission statement was, but how far they would reach. But that was kind of interesting. And our battalion commander got shot down that day, and then we got started getting blasts from a couple of different sides, and we had to pull back. And that day I thought Diaz got killed. But when we saw this guy spring up and just start opening up with a pistol on Diaz, and Diaz fell down, and well, that's the day
you were touched by God.
Yeah. And which I won't get into that, but really,
we will.
But
next time.
Yeah, but anyway, it was a moment, and so anyway, that was the bad guy, and we were supposed to take him, and with considerable risk, I think, as sometimes they would say.
Sure, right.
And but it was considerable risk what the heck we was doing, because the battalion commander was down, and this guy had I think his own company protecting him, and so we had 2 or 3 companies fighting them, and our battalion commander got shot down and everything, but he had, I guess, pulled off, and that's why we were right on him, and but we didn't get him, but we did get maybe a little compensation on him, because the Holy called in on. We put a 50-pound shape charge in there to help him, understand our situation a little better.
And that was that, as they would say.
Yeah, I mean, but honestly, it'd been better if we'd have captured him. But
sure,
he's one of them guys that he wouldn't went down.
Right. Yeah, he's only going out one way.
Right.
Yeah. I remember you telling me that when your point man, which was Diaz, went down, which he'd actually just tripped. Correct? He did not.
No, he was going to fire, but he didn't have shotgun. He was an M79 operator, and he had this HE, and so he just seen this guy shooting at him, and he just fell down. Diaz didn't get hit, by the way.
Right, but you thought
he was dead.
You thought he was dead, and I remember you saying that was the only time. Well, I don't want to say the only time, but you said you were in such a rage that you caught yourself firing, and instead of yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah, thanks because I've kind of forgotten about that.
Which, by the way, you celebrated your 75th birthday 2 days ago. So yeah, happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you, son.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's, there's a proper rifle placement against the shoulder, and I had the foregrip in my hand and the pistol in the other, and I'm shoving rounds at him. I mean, I'm not aiming. I'm just pointing.
And you said you were walking towards that position, and it's just like you caught yourself, like, okay, what the heck am I doing here?
Right.
Yeah.
And then I seen him go down in the hole. Well, actually, he went behind a bush first, and the guy said later on that was standing behind me and another guy that was shooting. They said they saw fragments of his body coming off of him. And then he ran and jumped down in the hole.
So you were hitting him as you were hitting. Well, maybe.
Yeah. So they say. I don't know.
So,
but yeah, I was enraged. I was totally. I about lost it. I was that angry.
Yeah. Well, when you see one of your own guys go down, and you're thinking he's down for the count.
We've seen it before, but
right.
It just this shouldn't have happened, and we're catching rounds coming into our position too, and it's just uncomfortable.
So that was a pretty heavy firefight then.
Well, it wasn't like you see in the movies where you got machine guns strafing and rounds all over you. I mean, there's zingers, and they had collected some M79s from somewhere, so we got them popping in on us, and we got rounds firing overhead. But there again, nothing that was really effective as far as it just wasn't,
Well, one thing that I always admire about a lot of men that have been in combat, and it seems like the older generations nowadays, this might be lost a bit, but certainly men that have, as the great Colonel Cooper would say, have seen the elephant, which means they've actually, been in real combat, is how a lot of you guys will downplay it. Like, I think we were talking, one time I was talking with Uncle Homer, who had been in World War II, was an infantryman, and had been through the Italian campaigns. And the battalion I was in the Army had been through Anzio, and anybody that knows anything about history, Anzio was a horrible, horrible battle.
Yes,
I mean, it was, I think, probably just as bad as Normandy. It was just a smaller, there weren't as many men involved in it. But anyway,
exactly.
And I'd found out that he said, you know, when he went through Anzio, and I just stopped, and I'm like, holy cow, I'm like, Uncle Homer, I didn't realize you were at Anzio. And immediately he was like, I wasn't part of the invasion. He's like, I got there, you know, I don't know, several days or a week or two later, whatever it was.
Right.
He's like, no, I was not part. And how the older generations, you'll go out of your way, like just, you know, you're describing this firefight, and it's like, well, it was bad, but it wasn't, you know, I don't want to. And I don't know, I admire that. That's one thing, because it seems like a lot of people, boy, it seems like it's getting worse. But I say that, but there's a lot of fake guys out there, a ton of fake Vietnam, which I think 10%, I'd read one time, only 10% of the veterans that were actually in Vietnam were infantry. Now, that doesn't mean that they didn't get mortared, that they weren't, you know,
exactly.
they've all got their stories too. But as far as actually being somebody that's kicking indoors, you know, and again, combat medics, they're right there a lot of times with the grunts, you know.
Oh.
And of course, the greatest MOS of all time, the forward observers, you know, they, which of course I was one. I say that tongue in cheek, but FOs are there. So there's a lot of people, you know, combat engineers. There's a lot of guys that are seeing combat. But at the end of the day, it's all about the infantryman. It's about the man with the rifle that's boots on the ground, you know. But
well, I've heard a lot of people say, boy, I'd hate to be a door gunner, you know, in a helicopter, because, you know, that, well, I agree with you. That's a dangerous job, very dangerous.
Sure.
The flight hazards into itself, let alone, you know, getting fired upon.
Right.
But I think you also got to remember, too, that guy that's firing it and that machine gunner on that chopper is firing back. If they fly and get up out of there, they're good to go.
Right. But you guys are flying in that to land.
Well, yeah. So we got to clean that mess up.
And then you're getting off the bird.
Yeah. It's like we got to do the dishes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, you know, and.
But in the same token, I've been, when I was in the C.R.I.P unit, we might do 3 flights a day. These hot spots would jump around. They never knew where we were coming.
Right.
You know. So.
Yeah.
But I got a lot of respect for them, you know.
Oh, yeah. Well, and it's the older you get, what amateurs argue tactics, professionals argue logistics. I mean, at the end of the day, it's logistics, you know. So it's all part of the team. But at the same time, that sounds good when you're the guy that's on the front end of it. You know, it's a whole nother ball game.
There's a job for everybody.
Right. There you go. All right, I got a few things written down here. Let's go with the pistol.
The Chi-Com?
No. The special pistol that they brought in for you guys to use.
Yeah. Well, it was a Smith & Wesson. Looked to be stainless. It looked to be on like a 44 frame. And not really a long barrel, I would say 2.5, 3 inches. And then at the top of the frame, there was like a hole drilled. And the bullets looked to be made out of stainless steel, or the cartridges, I should say.
Right.
And they were flat on top like a shotgun shell. And they said it was spring loaded. And then we took apart one of them, and it had a real small primer in it too, as I recall. And then the pellets that were in it were cut into like a stop sign almost. And then they were placed inside this.
Kind of octagonal.
Yeah. And when you would shoot it, there was hardly no noise. I mean, you heard it, but they sent it out to do tunnel work when I was in C.R.I.P. Well, we had it for a while, like not quite a week even. I think probably they found out we weren't probably supposed to have it. We weren't special enough. But I did some tests with it, and at the end of an ammo crate, you know, how they unfold and everything, and you got 2 ends to it, and they're about a 1/4 inch plywood. And I set a couple of them up, and I laid down. And about the length of this room it would shoot through two of them.
I'll be
and
darned.
hardly no noise.
Yeah.
And I got pictures. I wished I'd have taken close-ups, but I do have one with an old buddy of mine holding it next to a chopper.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it's probably CIA stuff, you know.
Right. I remember a buddy of mine, I told him, I told people about that pistol before. And anyway, he was reading, I think it was something on, I don't know if it was on Vietnam or what, because that's, how do you silence a revolver?
Right. You wouldn't think it was possible.
Right. And then he's like, man, he was really freaking out, and he called me, and he was, hey, I just read this whole thing, and I think that's that pistol you were telling me about that your dad had over there. And,
yeah, nobody believes it.
Yeah, it's one of those stories you say, and it's like, okay, yeah, sure you did. Yeah.
Well, you got so many posers out there, too. And inaccurate information, and, it's
that's one thing whenever we did we did the interview the first time, for our family, basically. I showed your DD4, Carter, the DD-214, your awards, your air medals, your Bronze Star, your all of that, all your awards to show, to prove, because anybody can say whatever they want, and there are a ton of guys out there that are bogus.
Yeah. Well, look how many people are Navy SEALs.
Right.
What's these?
Don Shipley.
Don Shipley.
Man, I love
he goes
that
after
guy.
him, and he has like 100 a week.
It's insane. And here's the other thing, a good buddy of mine. Well, I think Wayne would be okay with me using his name. Wayne Prose always jokes, I have the most specialized MOS in the Army, because I was a generator mechanic. Have you ever met another one? I met a lot of snipers, met a lot of Rangers, a lot of Green Berets, but how many generator mechanics?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And everybody wants to be a hero, and you know what? And here's the thing: any of these jobs, it's honorable. I don't care what you did. If you raised your right hand, you left mommy and daddy's teat. Whether you went to war, whether it to me, it's just, okay, you served your country. That's honorable. There's nothing more honorable than that. And then you can move up. Then you can say, okay, well, you did this job, or you did this, or you did that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Guys that are in intel, like the deep, really, hardcore intelligence, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a couple more things here. The bar fight. Oh. You want to tell the story of the bar fight? This is a good one. This is one it seems like a lot of people really get a kick out of.
Well, it's kind of it was an unusual day. We got 2 new guys in, still was in our C.R.I.P unit, and turned out almost we got one guy in. He was, I can't remember his name, and I won't say it if I did, but he was our medic, and he was from Detroit.
Okay.
And ended up, he's kind of a pale-looking kid, just tall and thin, like, slim like all of us mostly.
Right.
But he was a boxer, too,
Right.
Didn't do much in Golden Gloves, but he knew how.
Right.
And then had this other kid, and he said, well, take him up to the village and let them have something to drink and show them around a bit.
So now this is, I don't mean to interrupt you, but your platoon is outside of this village.
Right.
And then within this village is this.
Well, we lived in an Arvin compound, but our compound was a compound within a compound.
Okay. So
right.
So the compound you lived in was Arvin, which was the Army of the Republic of Vietnam.
Right.
And then
we didn't live with Americans, right?
Right. You lived with Vietnamese.
Right.
Then within the Arvin compound, the Vietnamese Army compound, you had your own little C.R.I.P compound.
Right. We could defend ourselves from anything.
Okay.
Or most anything.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it was kind of, so we went in and we had one guy, he was an old timer, it was Pineapple. I can't remember his name, but he was from Hawaii. Kind of a tall,
fitting nickname.
Yeah, and he was a strong, buff dude,
Right.
Well, I guess he'd been there several times before he get permission to go to the Ville, and for the most part, it was a safe village, but he kind of fell for this little bar gal.
Right.
Well, we're sitting there having a beer, and all of a sudden, he went to go do something, and I heard this noise, and I see 3 or 4 guys clinging to this one man. And I'm looking and I can't really believe what I'm seeing. It's him, and he's got 2 or 3 ARVN dudes on him. I mean, they're actually on him. Their feet ain't touching the ground,
Right.
and they're hitting him.
Right.
And all of a sudden, I start seeing them just fly. Well, I guess one of these other guys of the ARVNs, that was his sweetheart, you know.
Oh, sure.
And they took offense to it. And all of a sudden, boy, I mean, there's bodies flying everywhere.
Right.
And, boy, we fought our way out to the street because our gun jeep was sitting outside. And, well, they were paving the road then. We had, they hired engineers from the United States to come and build the roads.
Right.
And so there's piles of white rock and everything. And,
Right.
and I square off against this one Vietnamese guy. And, boy, all of a sudden he throws a kick, and he's going for my liver. And but he screwed up and used too much of his foot instead of his toes, you know.
Right.
Proper kick for him.
Right.
And, oh, God, I might be in trouble here, so we spar out a little bit. And, you know, I
Because he obviously knew what he was doing.
Yeah, oh, you could tell he
was a fighter.
He was some type of martial arts.
Right.
Because the way he was stepping and everything, it was right.
Right.
But anyway, so we did a little bit more turnaround and this and that, and then all of a sudden I threw a right leg kick to his groin, and I could feel it through my jungle boots. I could feel something squishing.
Oh, man.
And he kind of raised up, and when he hit the ground, it was like folding a wet towel. It knocked him out. I'd never seen that before,
Yeah.
or really never heard of it. I've heard that it's possible, but I did it. And all of a sudden, this one little Vietnamese guy, he starts grabbing this white rock and throwing at us.
Right.
And, well, I ain't got, for some reason, we left our rifles in the gun jeep.
Right.
And I thought, oh, Lord, you know.
Right.
And so we run into this little shack, but they're selling stuff, and they got glass counters and all that. And that little Vietnamese guy, boy, he's chucking them rocks in there, and it's breaking. Me and this guy, our medic, you know, our new medic, and that's just crashing and tearing the heck out of all kinds of things
Right.
in there. And finally, he runs off to something to help somebody else out, and all of a sudden, Pineapple, he knocked several people out of the way, and
Right.
he got up on that gun jeep, and, you know, gun jeep, you got to crank it twice.
It's a 50 cal.
It's 50 cal,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Which is big.
Yeah. It's got a lot of pee.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, boy, when he cranked that, but I'm glad he did, because there was one dude standing there with an AR, an ARVN, and he's
M16, but yeah.
Yeah, and he's frantic, and he's on the verge of getting ready to shoot. Because, honestly, when we left, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 bodies, guys that would taken out. Not killed, but knocked
Right,
out.
but they're laying. You got.
Everything was fist to fist,
Right.
foot to foot, or foot to.
But when you're dealing with combat soldiers on
Right.
both sides, because the ARVNs, you
Right.
know, I
Well,
mean,
there's-
they're our friendlies. You
Right.
know, they're our compatriots in this
Right.
battle. But
But yeah,
it's only a matter of time.
And if it hadn't been for that 50, it'd have been weird. So
Right.
anyway, we go back, and I guess the communication levels, because there's a MAC-V, was in charge of all that, so they'd catch all the radio banner and this and that, and all these GIs are going in and destroying this little village and this and that. All of a sudden, we got 3 or 4 Vietnamese officers, and we go, Rueff, you guys get the rest of these guys over here, you know.
Right.
And so we're lining up in the command and control bunker, you know. And here's all these officers, you know. And we kind of...
And what rank are they?
Well, I don't know. They had all kinds of different
Right.
stuff, but I know there's captains, maybe a major,
Okay.
or, you know, lieutenants, I'm sure.
Right.
It went up to command.
Sure.
Close to an international incident, I guess.
Right. I'm
And,
sure.
Like I say, boy, it was a mess. And so finally we saluted them and then shook each of the officers' hand. And then the Vietnamese left, you know. And, of course, we made apologies, which, you know.
Right.
You know, what are they going to do to us?
Right.
You know?
Right.
But so anyway, the lieutenant, then he lambasted us, you know, and a barrage of verbal abuse. And And I happened to be the first one in. So he says, now you guys get the hell out of here, And so I'm walking out. I'm the last one to leave. And he goes, Rueff. And I turn around and go, yes, sir. He goes, did we win? And I go, yes, sir. He goes, okay.
At the end of the day, how'd my boys do?
Yeah. I said, did we win? He said, yes, sir.
Yeah, we got them.
Yeah. So, that was different,
Yeah.
But, those things happen. You got different cultures clashing. And of course, you're
in the middle of a war.
Yeah, and and you can throw one woman into a front of 200 men, and somebody's going to get killed sooner or later.
It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, it's just
it's human nature.
Right. Well, I think it's just lack of females.
Well, yeah. When numbers get a little skewed back.
Yeah.
How about the night when you waited on 2 NVA battalions? And you went outside the wire.
Yeah, that's when I was with the line unit.
This is before you went to C.R.I.P.
Right.
Okay.
And we got pulled out to take care of an artillery battery.
A battery, which would be a company-sized element.
Right, and they said that there was supposedly an NVA battalion or North Vietnamese battalion coming through, and we're there to be a blocking force. And we're exactly a quarter of a mile from the Cambodian border.
And you're waiting on, was it like an NVA battalion?
Right.
Which, for anybody that's listening doesn't know, you're looking at probably, 300 to 500 men, or something like that.
Yeah.
A significant force.
Right. And we got, I think, 6 field guns and a platoon of us. Whatever it takes to man it's a mobile unit.
So there's probably 40 or 50 of you guys.
No, there's only a platoon of us. It wasn't even a full company.
Well, okay, but I'm thinking when I was in a platoon's about 40 guys. Was a platoon?
Well, back then I think was about 30 some.
Okay.
Give or take.
So, and then I'm thinking the guys manning the guns, so maybe 40 guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course, the 155s is what they were.
Right.
They bring a lot of pee, but that's. But anyway, so we set up and we started had an engineering group with us too.
Okay.
And they helped build just simple bunkers with the metal, corrugated metal.
Right.
Where we could build some quick shooting positions, but not much.
Sure.
It's not mostly a little bit below ground. And then we'd string concertina wire around each one of them, so each position hopefully could man itself, and hold on. And in comes we call them dusters. It's like a light tank, but they take the turn off, and then they got 20, I don't know if it's 20 or 40 millimeter two-barreled cannons, basically, to shoot. It's like they're anti-aircraft guns originally.
Okay, but they're using it for anti-personnel.
Right.
Okay.
And so we're sitting there, and they get in. It's just barely where you could see.
Right.
Well, we got a cane break about 75 to 100 yards in front of us, and then an old a sugar plantation into Cambodia.
Right.
You can see the old rusty buildings and all that stuff. And so it's kind of a weird situation. Anyway, them guys, they were supposed to open up on that cane break to test their guns, but the thing was that they turned them around, turned them on us, and we didn't know it. And so we're sitting on top of our bunker, and we got 3 strands, 2 of concertina wire, 2 on the ground and 1 on top of that. Kind of make a triangle, basically. And they open up and they hit the concertina wire. There's 3 of us were sitting on top of this little bunker, and they hit the concertina wire, and it never hurt any of the 3 of us. And boy, I lost my senses again. I grabbed my rifle and I got through that wire because it's one way in, one way out.
Right. Right.
So I got there and I shoved my rifle in. I don't know if it was an officer's face or a sergeant or whoever. But I said, it wasn't pleasant.
I can only imagine.
And but they knew that they was close to getting shot, and so but the only thing that saved us instead of firing more was that the gun had jammed.
Otherwise, they would have killed you. I mean, more than likely.
Yeah.
So I still.
And then they said, well, we want to send some guys out on an LP. That's a listening post.
Listening post.
Or listening post.
Yeah, we called them LPOPs.
Okay.
Listening post / observation.
Right.
But yeah.
And we thought, oh, man, this is the worst thing in the world.
And you were one of them.
Yeah.
And how many other guys were with you?
Well, I don't know how many throughout that whole deal, but I know there was 2 or 3.
So let's say there's
always 2, and sometimes 3 because you got your radio on.
Okay, so in my mind, you've got this huge cane field,
right,
which is perfect for the enemy to move through.
Exactly. Then
you guys are on this LP,
right? But
and then how far behind you are the good guys?
About 125 yards, if that.
Okay.
But then there's a big drainage ditch, and that's what we got down in.
So you're in a drainage ditch. How far is the cane from you?
Oh, 15. You got to climb up it. It was that deep a ditch.
Right.
So 10 yards, 15.
So they literally could have 300 to 400 men 10 to 15 yards from you on top of you before you could ever have a chance to see them.
Right. It's a no-win situation.
And that night, they didn't come.
Right. And we pulled out the next day. And that was funny, too, because the next day they pulled out and they said, well, Ruff, get on that last track. Or it wasn't a track, it was a deuce and a half. It was carrying the ammunition for the guns. And so I start wandering that away. And then I'm waving at the guys, and then all of a sudden I took off running. And it's the last vehicle, and they don't see me. So off the road they go. And there I am alone again. And I'm thinking, this can't be for real. So I get out, and I run out in the road, and here comes a Lambretta filled with people. And I made him stop, and I got on, and I go, and off he went. Boy, I mean, he's giving her all kinds of hell.
Yeah.
And for some reason, they stop for something.
And here you come.
And yeah.
Hey, thanks for,
you SOBs.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't you see me waving?
No,
man.
Yeah. And how far were you from Cambodia?
Well, it's a quarter of a mile.
Holy cow.
Where we set up our fire base.
Good night.
And then we pulled out the next day. So.
Yeah.
But
that's
a freaky night.
I bet that night would be, I can't imagine. Boy, that's just not a good night to get sleep, is it?
Oh, you don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Obviously. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where you got your hand grenades close too, because hopefully you can slow them down enough but then you got to worry about getting back to your wire without somebody shooting you.
Right. You got to come in both ways, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
How about the Chu Hoi program? The first time you told me about this is, to me, it's insanity. It's absolutely insanity.
Well, yeah. We had one captain one time said that, because he had a team that he'd go in. I think it's probably more like a lurk thing.
Right.
And they'd pull special missions too,
Mm-hmm.
And he says the only reason these SOBs are friends with me is because they know I'll kill them.
Right.
And they could speak English, and they just ignored him, But they were all Chu Hois, everyone's Viet Cong, or North Vietnamese.
So the program is that we have the North Vietnamese Army, which was Army regulars. They wore the regular Army. They were part of the Army.
Right.
The area you were in most of it was primarily Viet Cong.
Right.
Which was kind of like their secret little militia. One day they're a farmer during the day. At night they're dropping mortars on you, trying to shoot you, whatever the case might be. And the Chu Hoi program was you would capture these guys. You would capture somebody trying to kill you, an enemy combatant. They would say, Chu Hoi, Chu Hoi. They hold their hands up. And at that point, as it's supposed to go,
right,
you take them into custody.
And then they go back and they spend... You're indoctrinated,
right.
So whatever the reverse of that is, supposedly.
So we indoctrinate them, right? Basically, deprogram them.
And then, but they could speak the language, and that was very beneficial.
But when they come back, now all of a sudden they're fighting with the Americans. They're the good guys now,
right? Yeah, you had to watch them.
I can only imagine.
Special missions would come up. They had no knowledge of it.
Right.
They weren't informed of it.
Right.
They just knew we were doing something.
Right.
And they were basically just interpreters, although they were armed with the same, stuff that we had. But, we had 3 of them. And I found out later none of them made it, but it was Nom, Boo, and Get.
Yeah.
And they were really great guys.
And so you trusted them then? You did trust them?
Well, to a degree.
Right.
Because, I've seen them work them over.
Right.
We'd catch somebody, and they'd be right in there doing the interrogation.
Right, right.
And sometimes that wasn't pretty. So,
I bet, yeah.
But, but they say Nom, he was the one that, he was a Viet Cong, and they threw him out because he said he was a mortarman.
Right.
And he was the boss of it. And I don't know how their rank went or anything, but he set up into a timber and with real low-lying branches, and when they opened fire, he killed a bunch of his own men because they were impacting the trees and on top of them.
And
detonating and destroying his own men.
I'll be darned.
And who knows how many, so they threw him out. Right. He had nowhere to go, so he had to come over.
I'll be darned.
But, it's just a weird thing that happens, in warfare,
Sure.
There's always turncoats no matter where you go.
Yeah, right. Yeah. The day that you were farming, and for years, you talked about you'd went into a tunnel.
Right.
Yeah. Do you mind telling that story?
Well, yeah. It was up in Hobo Woods, and all of a sudden there was it was a spider hole, and we thought it was just a spider hole, and then all of a sudden it opened up to, it would be about the size of that main room, about like a small garage, but and about the peak of what a small garage would be.
Okay.
And there was a tunnel going off on it, and we searched the tunnel, and all of a sudden there was just a green pipe coming up. Well, it was a bamboo pipe, but it was green. I thought, boy, that's weird. They're just using it for support.
Mm-hmm.
And so I never thought another thing about it. But the way they would cook in evenings, they would throw the ashes. There was a ladder actually going down into this hole. That's how big it was. It wasn't have to crawl down, and then it opens up. The remarkable thing was that the fire was real close to that hole. So if the smoke got too much, they'd just shove the ashes into that hole and pull the lid down. And so there would be no smoke. And it was enough room that they built small fires to start with,
Right.
And so that was effective. And I found, I have a Ho Chi Minh greeting card. So, we're talking, NVA there.
And I think you've still got that, don't you?
Yeah, it's in a safety deposit box. That's,
Right.
Well, the papers for that pistol, too.
Sure.
Yeah. But, and pictures of his wife and all that. And that's too personal. I ain't going to keep that, so I just threw it back.
Right.
I left it there. It was all wrapped up into a handkerchief. You could tell it was a prized possession, and I'm sure he really regretted losing it, but I'm not sure he got it back. But as we're leaving that day, there was a LRP team. I was with Line Company, and a LRP team was getting off. The very choppers that was landed to pick us up.
Right.
So they thought we'd all gone. So, it's kind of weird.
But I remember you telling me that you always wondered, but they were underneath you.
Right.
You figured out one day you were on the farm.
Oh, it hit me like a rock. I thought, you dummy. You knew it. You knew it, and then you let it go by.
Yeah.
Because a couple 100 pounds of shaped charges of TNT, and but we could have opened up the world on them.
Sure. Yeah.
But
yeah,
it wasn't to be.
Yeah.
But I wasn't the only guy in there. There was 2 or 3 of us.
Right.
And so they missed it too. So I guess they can share the blame.
Yeah.
But that was that was one of the biggest complexes. That was bigger than Cu Chi even. And in Cu Chi, I think they told us that when we go in and map it and do all that, crawl them tunnels and stuff, we never had any real big rooms in them. It was mostly just all crawling, at least the part that I went through. And supposedly we did a mile underground. but I don't believe that. I'd say,
Holy cow, man, that's a long way.
Yeah, that's a big day. But I looked at it as maybe a quarter,
Right.
if that.
Yeah.
Because a mile, that's forever.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I can. I can only imagine. So you're wrapping up your time. How was it as your time was getting closer? You always hear the stories of, man, you're getting down towards the end and you really start getting nervous and you really start thinking about stuff.
Sure,
and,
sure. Yeah, well, you start, first of all, you don't think you're ever going home. And then they start offering you things too. Well, hey, maybe I am going home. And then he said, well, you got 6 months because it's 2-year
enlistment.
draft.
Yeah.
Enlistment. And so you had 6 months to do back in the States. But if you stayed 3 months longer, then when you left Vietnam, you'd go back to California and they'd write you up whatever.
Process you.
And away you went.
Right.
And I thought, I ain't lost nothing over here, and I ain't going to stay to find it.
I don't blame you.
Because how can you find something you ain't lost?
There you go. Right.
And so anyway, I went home, but I had one guy, Powers, and he did that. And 2 or 3 weeks later on me, but he got killed the second day that I was back in the rear. Takes 3 days to process to back to the world, and he got killed. But, he wouldn't have made it anyway, but he was going to stay, But.
So the U-out process, the Army does a good job of training you up. They do a good job of getting you ready.
All right.
They don't do a very good job of getting you ready to go back to being a civilian, do they?
No, not really. No. When, back in those days, other than family, the press and everybody didn't think much of you. I had a lot of protests.
I remember, whenever Ty had graduated basic training. At the same weekend, I graduated airborne school. And so the family, you remember that? Everybody went down to Fort Benning, Georgia.
Right.
And I remember we were at the, maybe this was when I was back. No, I think I was out of the Army. Maybe Ty was back on leave. I might be getting that wrong. But
I think you had it right.
But we're talking about going to we were partying at colleges is what we were talking about.
Oh.
And, there was a bar that we would go to, and there was a college there. Well, there's college girls. This is when I was down in Louisiana. Anyway, he was in North Carolina. I think they may have went to the, University of North Carolina, whatever town that is, or Duke, someplace him and his buddies had went up to. And I remember you just were like, you partied with college girls? And that was just such a big thing for you, because when you were in, if you guys would have went to a college, they would have ran you. I mean, they hated you.
Yeah.
You guys were despised.
I did go to a junior college for a while, and you had girls on both sides.
Sure. But I mean, just
later on, yeah. I mean, welcomed. Yeah. Open arms almost. Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, versus,
Yeah.
How they viewed you guys at that time, and that, to me, that's of all the shame of Vietnam, and not to get into the whole political stuff, the Gulf of Tonkin. I mean, and whoever the power brokers that decided this is what we're going to do for whatever, one of the probably the biggest shame is how you guys were viewed, and I think, of course we realize that now, but people don't realize in the 60s and the 70s and even then through the early 80s, anytime, well, even through the mid 80s, the late 80s, I would say, if there's a Vietnam vet, he's always whacked out. He's on drugs, or he can't handle it. He's on the edge. He's almost ready to get a rifle.
Oh, yeah. Or a baby killer.
He's a baby killer, or a rapist. And you guys were just, in pop culture, everything, you were viewed in such a negative manner.
Right.
And to me, that's the biggest shame of all of it, because all you were doing was what you were told.
Right.
And at the time you thought you're doing your patriotic duty to God and country, and we're stopping the plight of communism.
Yep. That was it. And we did our part. Just the world, as we called it, didn't do theirs.
That's right.
But, that's on them. It ain't on
The
me.
politicians didn't do their part.
Right.
I know I have a couple buddies that they get such a kick out of your quote. They said, well, if they wanted to send me to kill communists, why'd they send me to Vietnam? They
Right.
could have sent me to Champagne.
Right.
Because there were communists running for, Chancellor of the universe or something.
Yeah, some menial thing, but it was actually the first time I could vote.
Yeah.
And I started going through that, and I thought, boy, I can't believe
And
it.
you saw a communist on the ballot.
Yeah.
And here you are going to fight a bunch of poor people that just,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And them poor people, hardworking Vietnamese.
Sure.
I mean, just great people, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a shame we had to destroy a whole bunch of them, but,
So how many days from the time you were in Vietnam to where you were back on the farm in Illinois?
Oh, let's see. 3 days, what do you call it, D-Rose or whatever? Get all your paper, your
I can't
shot
remember.
record and everything. It took I think it's 3 days, and then on the third day you're flying out.
And then probably a day in transit between layovers.
Right.
And then where'd they pick you up at? St. Louis?
No, well, actually, I flew into California, and then I flew. I got my papers and pay, and then I flew from California, San Francisco. I went from what was it, Wright Air Force Base, I think, or something. I can't recall.
I don't remember. Yeah.
And then went to San Francisco, basically, and then flew out. Went to St. Louis. And that was weird too, because I hadn't used a telephone. I'd used an PRC-25 a few times,
Which is the radio?
yeah, military radio. But I would use them frequently. But all of a sudden, military standards, and I'm in there, and I'm going to call the folks and tell them I'm heading home.
Right.
That I'm in St. Louis, because I got a 16 or 18 day drop out of 365 days in.
Right.
And so I thought, so I sat down, and boy, I'm just happy as hell because I'm in St. Louis now.
Yeah, you're
I mean,
home.
if I have to, I can walk home.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a couple 100 miles or whatever.
Right.
I can do it.
Yeah.
And all I got to do is cross that river.
That's it. Yeah.
And so anyway, I sit down in that phone booth and I start to dial, and I couldn't remember the folks' number. And so I sit there for a little bit, and all of a sudden, man, I know it. And then bing, there it come up.
Yeah.
And then I dialed. And of course, Mom was crying, and
Oh, sure. Yeah.
it was something.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah. And then I flew from St. Louis, I flew into Decatur.
So they pick you up in Decatur.
Right.
So 4 or 5 days?
That had been about the fourth or fifth day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 4 or 5 days before you're in Vietnam.
Well, in the field.
In the field. And then now you're
Right.
home.
Right.
That's remarkable. That isn't much downtime, is it?
Oh, no.
I remember Grandma telling a story one time that you weren't sleeping well or something. This is, you just got back and you got up to eat. Man, they had a party for you or something, or maybe she'd made a pie, something, and you were up eating it. And she had woke up, and it's either late at night, early in the morning, or in the middle of the night. I don't remember exactly. But she walked in and seen you, and it was like, well, Harold, what are you doing in the dark? And she flipped the light on, and you jumped up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you wasn't used to it.
Yeah, because if you're in the middle, just a week ago, a few days ago, if you're in complete darkness and all of a sudden, boom, there's a light on you, there's a problem.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't even, well, you liked it, but like when the flare would go off, because you was trained to use just one eye.
Right. Yep.
But human nature.
Sure.
I was not that disciplined. I wasn't that smart, I guess.
Right.
I like, oh man.
Yeah. What's that? Yeah.
A million candle power flare.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah. Well, it was weird. Like I said, I got back and went to a party because I had 30 days, not 30. I had 60. I had 6 months, but I had a month vacation.
Right. You had 30 days. And then before you went back, because you still had to complete your enlistment.
Right. I still had 6 months to go.
Which was the rest of your enlistment you did in Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Right.
But you had a month at home before you had to report to Bragg.
Right. But it's funny, we'd go to a party at night, and you know how like you got just a pole light, and then how it angles down into the light pattern, and then outside of that it's dark.
Right, yeah.
And then inside it's light.
Right.
You know, there's a little transition period. And, of course, we were all standing around drinking beer and laughing. And, of course, there's girls there and this and that. And all of a sudden they'd go, well, Harold, what are you doing standing over there? And I'd be in the dark. And then I'd come back over, and then pretty soon I'd ease away from it. It's just, and you smell and you hear things better and different than you ever did before, you know. Yes. Your senses were so acute.
Yeah.
You know.
I can remember, this is not the, I guess I am making a comparison, but on a much lighter note, I can remember in basic training, because, you know, when I went in, it was all men. You know, I was combat MOS, it's all men. And I can remember we were probably week 6 or 7. We were outside. We were shining our boots. They had us out. And all of a sudden, I remember I just threw my head. I smelled a woman.
Mm-hmm.
I smelled her before I saw her.
Right.
And it's like other guys, and we're like, and then here she comes walking through. I don't know, she was military. She had a uniform on. She walked in, you know.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. And then I've got another buddy that was a Marine, and he talked about, he was in Desert Storm, and he talked about the same thing. The first time he's back, you could smell a woman before, you know. Right. So I can imagine if you're, you know, in Vietnam, and because you're around a whole nother culture, a whole nother, plant life, animal life, the whole thing. And then now you're back with Americans and American hygiene and American women with perfume and deodorants and whatever. Yeah.
Well, and it's funny because I had a clean pair of fatigues on, the jungle fatigues coming back. And I mean, I had them starched and the whole bit because I knew I was getting out, because you could get all that done in a day's time, you know. And that's what I'm wear home, and then you turn your other gear in, you know.
Right.
And so there I was doing all that, and I wore them back to the States. And, of course, when they got to California, they put me in a new uniform, and they had all the ribbons and everything, you know, that you were allowed to have. And got all that done, and so I put my jungle fatigues in, and Mom got into them as a dude. Oh, boy, I can't believe how they stink, you know. Oh man, yeah. Well, you know, there'd be times you wear them for a week. Never change.
Yeah. But well, there was a night you spent. I remember the whole night in the water.
Oh yeah. Boy, your feet and your hands will end up being like prunes.
Oh yeah.
You know, and really tender too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember one night, we got to intel they was going to blow this bridge, so they sent 4 of us out to set up an ambush for them. And where I was told to go, the water was particularly deep, so, and it's funny how mud can become a friend, and boy, you just kind of squeeze down into it. And I kept all my ammo, my clips or magazines, and I put them on my shoulder, and I leaned up against the bank, and then I had my rifle. I had my rifle on top of my shoulder too,
to keep it out of the water.
Right.
Yeah.
And you take better care of your rifle than you do yourself.
Sure.
You know.
And I remember you said you like to carry your magazines in a Claymore bag.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But then occasionally I'd carry. Oftentimes I'd carry another. Speed loaders, you know what I mean, a bandolier of them.
Right.
So, you know, you always have backup. That's quite a few rounds.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there again, we only put 18 rounds in the 20-round clip.
Right.
And
you want to save the springs was the thinking at the time.
Right. And the NVA and the Viet Cong, they had 30-rounders.
Yeah.
And really a better round.
Yeah, it's 7.62 by 39. I mean, it's a 30 caliber versus, you know, our 5.56 is a 223, which is just a big 22. I mean,
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's very effective round.
Oh, yeah.
But not in brush.
Right.
You know, high foliage, it's weak.
Sure.
Because I've lost kills because of it. But,
Right. Yeah.
But,
hitting and deflecting and
right.
all of that.
Well, they blow up.
Right,
you know,
yeah.
If they hit the right stuff. you
Sure.
know.
Well, Pop, I appreciate this.
Well, thank you, son. I do too. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
You know,
well-
never done anything like this.
Well, I haven't either. Hey, this is
number one.
This is the first time. And one thing I want to close with is Carter Bland had looked this up and told me, and I looked it up and verified it. Between 1965 to 1972, according to the Department of Defense, they trained 700 tunnel rats. So I figure you're close to the middle. And I was talking to Ty the other night, and we kind of joked. I said, "Well, should we call him 350?" And he's like, "Yeah, he's number 350." So we kind of agreed on that. So that you're number 350 in our mind. But you think only 700 men that actually, and again, you hear a lot of guys claim it, but yeah.
Well, when I took that training back at Cu-Chi, they would want to give me a diploma, but they'd run out.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I didn't care about it anyway.
Right.
I just wonder if the 25th Division has any records of who went and who didn't. It'd be interesting.
That would be neat to try to find.
It'd be verification.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't matter.
Right. Well,
But
I remember.
But it'd be different for family history later on. You know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That'd be the only thing.
Because can you imagine if we could have talked to our kinfolk that fought in the Civil War or the Revolution, or God, it'd have been great if I could have sat down and talked with Grandpa.
Right.
You know?
Well, and what he looked like, you see a picture of what's his voice like, all that. So it kind of makes it more personal, I would think.
Yeah.
But, heck, they may not care neither.
Yeah.
So you don't know.
Yeah, you never know, I guess.
Yeah.
But
warmongers.
Yeah. Well, but every right that anybody's ever had has been won at the end of a gun barrel because of men like you that were out there carrying them. So,
well, yeah, I suppose so.
Yep. Well, God bless you, Dad. Thank you so much for coming in. Love you, Pop. And we're going to do this one again.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, son.
All righty. Take
Bye.
care.